Well, in recent times there have been a lot of talk of mathematics in India, and usually it is about the history of mathematics over long years of time. This is about mathematics which is currently happening in India and people in mathematics over the last 50 years or so. And we will now talk to one of the greatest Indian mathematicians of this period, Professor M S Narasimhan. Well, I may also add, I am very lucky that he was my guide, and I am very happy to conduct this interview. You grew up in a small village in the prime of British India, right? So let's have some, what's your impressions about your childhood days? What was it like?
Okay. I mean, first of all, as you say, I grew up in a small village, and there was an elementary school with just one teacher for 5 classes. But somehow it worked well. I mean, there was no problem. Then when I had to go to secondary school, it was about 5 miles from my place. There were not so many buses and so on and so forth. And the only way we could go to that place and then come back from the town, which is nearby, is to use a bullock cart. That's how we had access to what we call secondary school education.
Was it a single bullock or 2 bullocks?
Only bullock. I said bullocks, bullock cart, only single. I won't get into that.
So your family was a well-to-do family?
See, I come from a family of agriculturists, and once we were fairly well off. But due to some reason, my father passed away when I was 14 and was the eldest son, and agriculture became complicated and so on. So we fell on what we call reduced circumstances. But however, I must say, there was no tradition of any academic things in my family. Okay, in some sense, I was probably the first to undertake some higher level academic studies.
I was going to ask you, from that time, children from that area, how many do you think or you know who are in academics today? Are there many who chose to go to that secondary school or?
Yeah, there are quite a few who chose to go to the secondary school.
Right.
But probably a small number, but not a negligible number.
Right, right.
Because they used to come, some people even used to walk these 5 miles, you know. Yeah. I mean, so there used to be reasonable number of people.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say they took to an academic interest.
Right. So slowly it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
Which is the town where the school was located?
This is called, it has 2 names. One Chayar, Tiruvatipuram. It's the same place now. It's about, well, I don't know, 15, 16 kilometers west of Kanchipuram.
Right.
So that was the school days. Now, so I don't know. Yeah.
You went up to SSC in that school?
Yes, I went to SSLC.
Around that time, how many children were there in your class, for instance?
Maybe there are sections, 2 sections or something like that. Maybe 30, 20 in school, I mean high school.
And did you enjoy going to school?
Yes, I didn't mind anyway. But the important thing was that's in the school I was introduced to mathematics. In the high school, not in the elementary school so much. So, I mean, one of the things was, there are 2 things I think which got me interested in that. I mean, one is the mathematics of Euclid. You know, nowadays that's not very popular, I'm told. I mean, Euclid is not very popular in schools. But one of the main reasons Euclid was interesting was it gave you an opportunity to think for yourself. I mean, there were some riders, problems, and so on and so forth. So that was important. And secondly, in the town, there was a small library by the Panchayat Union or whatever it is that used to contain normally general books. But for some reason, there were 2 or 3 advanced textbooks in mathematics. I don't know how they came there and so on. And I borrowed them. In fact, even as a student, I was allowed to borrow. And that gave me some little broader idea of mathematics. At the age of 13 or 14, I said I will do research in mathematics, told myself. Except I had absolutely no idea what research in mathematics was. I don't even remember who told me about doing research in mathematics.
So the other subjects didn't fascinate you much?
No, I had no problem with other subjects, but no fascination. What subject could be fascinated? Tell me at this stage.
Science.
But it was taught badly. I mean, it was, see, the trouble in most of these places is the exams, you are told some facts, the examiner should reproduce those facts, except probably in arithmetic or mathematics. There were some problems which you have to think for yourself. But unfortunately, when science was taught like this, you are told this and then you are. So maybe that's the reason. I mean, I didn't mind the other fields, but I mean, my real interest was mathematics.
Yeah, there is, among the classmates that you had, did you find anyone that you can actually talk to, discuss this sort of mathematics that interested you, or you were sort of, you stand out by yourself and there weren't really peers?
No, not at that stage, there was nobody.
Okay,
but it happened when I went to the university.
So you went to Chennai for college studies?
Yes.
To Loyola College?
Loyola College. Now you may say, why did I choose Loyola College? There were two colleges in Chennai which were supposed to be good for mathematics. And when I went to the college, I understood why it was considered to be one of the good places to study mathematics. And there was a Jesuit, French Jesuit, who was teaching mathematics. And that was the real, he was aware of some kind of modern mathematics. By the way, he was a student of very famous mathematician, Cartan.
Right.
And he was in touch with people like Larrey and others. So he knew some idea of what was happening in mathematics. And it's he who introduced us to some kind of modern mathematics. See, before that, there is not even algebra taught.
Did he already teach you at the intermediate level?
No, only the honors level.
But at the intermediate level, were there good mathematics teachers?
Yeah, I'll tell you. No, there were one or two intermediate level. There was one at least. See, because you know how it is in intermediate. There's one huge class of 100 people and there's only one or two teachers.
Right.
And they were quite good in their own way. I mean, I can't complain about them. But of course, the real change happened when I went to what may be called BA Honours. See, in Honours in South India is somewhat different from what used to be called North India. It's like a MA course, more or less. And that was a real luck for me to come into contact with Father Racine, which at a formative stage shaped my career.
Yeah.
Coming to Chennai from a rural background, did you have a culture shock, so to speak? Or no?
No. See, I must also say one more thing. I studied all subjects in my school in Tamil, which is local language, including mathematics, physics, except English was taught as a subject which used to be called first language. But it was taught quite well. You know that when you go to the universities, all the subjects are taught in English. That could have been a problem. It's not so much a cultural shock or something like this. But since English was taught fairly well, I had no problem in adjusting to that.
What about textbooks of that time? I mean, when you were doing the intermediate, as you said, you went from being taught in Tamil to English. Now, were they mostly British sort of textbooks?
Yes, at the intermediate level, yes. But I'll tell you later in the BA honors level, the whole thing was different mainly due to Racine.
Okay.
Hostel life was something new to you?
It's new, but I don't remember anything. I had no trauma, if you want, when I went to the hostel. That was quite...
Did you get close to any of your fellow students?
Yes. That's where I got a bit close to fellow students. In intermediate, already some 2 or 3 people who remained lifelong friends, although they went into some other different career. In intermediate, by the way, Seshadri and I joined the intermediate the same year. But we didn't know each other very well because we were in different sections. As I told you, it was divided into 2 sections, each with 70 or 80 or something. So, of course, when I went into honors, BA honors, then he also joined. Then it's a small class of 30, 40. Then you get to know these people.
So you didn't really know each other in intermediate?
No.
It's only
I think sort of we were aware of each other's existence because we used to top the mathematics in each section. So,
I see.
I didn't know him at all.
No, the textbook thing that you said you will mention.
Now, when I went to the honors class, we were exposed to very good textbooks. First of all, let me say, you know, this so-called modern algebra was never taught in India except perhaps in Calcutta. And Racine introduced that subject.
Right.
Now, at that time, Raghurathan existed only in German.
Yeah.
And so he used to give notes in English.
I see.
Not translating, but whatever the contents.
Right.
So that was really, you know, modern algebra is really the starting point of Bourbaki or something you can say, Vanderwater's book. So that we were introduced really to very nice and non-trivial mathematics.
Right.
And then the next was analysis. This is the only subject taught. In most universities, only analysis was taught.
Right. Right.
And we're fortunate to have a very good teacher in analysis. And also Racine had a notes for analysis, a book which introduced a bit of topological notions, which you don't introduce at that time, right? When you so I think we were quite exposed to good books. But the trouble was, due to the British system, there were 3 or 4 subjects, which what we may call classical, I don't know, mechanics,
Right.
which were taught badly. I mean, there's one Loney and
Dynamics
so
and
dynamics
Statics by Loney.
And then there's also a very interesting story. See, this is a book by, he wrote books and everything.
Right, right. Of course,
particle
coordinate
dynamics,
geometry,
coordinate
calculus,
geometry, everything.
Everything, yeah.
Loney. Loney.
S.L. Loney.
And they were the textbooks everywhere in India. There's a story that he had 3 children and he left the royalty to those 3 children. Then they were getting royalty till very recently, although British have stopped those textbooks 40 years ago from the colonies.
Right, right, yeah.
So, I mean, this was sort of, see, it was not, it's not a question of, it was taught badly. After all, classical mechanics, as you know, can be taught well. And that was a drag for good students.
Right.
While the other subjects really got interested.
So I have been a little puzzled about this situation at Loyola College right from the beginning. When you got these notes, modern algebra was taught and so on. How was it compatible with the university examination system?
This is a very interesting question. I often wonder how did Racine persuade the Senate to have algebra?
Right, because that was not the case anywhere in the world.
Because they will say, no, this is all too complicated.
Right.
I see, it never occurred to me to ask him this.
Right.
Now, recently when I was thinking, I thought, how did he manage to... See, of course, you can teach analysis with your syllabus, that's a different way. But this is a new subject which was introduced.
And almost always it runs into some kind of problem with one person or the other.
One person or a Senate or something like this.
Right.
So he managed to...
So when you were a student, algebra was already a official subject.
Official subject, you have to pass exam.
Okay. That's very interesting.
I think it happened only in Chennai, in maybe a bit in Calcutta because Levy was there.
Right. But not very much, even when I was a student.
I expect that the fact that Anandarao was in Presidency College and Vaidyanatha Swami was in the university helped in this matter.
I don't know. I can't say. I don't know. I don't know this. Anyway, Racine had the idea of identifying good students and give them good training by not only by class but also talking to them and so on and so forth. And I mean, somehow induced in students to have a taste in mathematics. That's to distinguish what's good and what's bad and which you should discard and so on and so forth. And that, as I said earlier, is the real sort of starting point of my career. And also one more last thing about Racine. It's he who advised me to apply Tata Institute.
Right.
So you applied to Tata Institute because Racine suggested you should.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known there's a place like that.
You try applying to other places?
It's a very interesting question because I asked Racine, okay, you asked me to go there. Suppose I am not selected. What do? I want to still do mathematics.
Right.
And he said, give up mathematics. Because, see, as I said, you won't do it today because there is a way of going abroad and so on. And for somebody coming from a small village thinking of going abroad and affording the money and all, out of the question.
Would you talk about things other than mathematics with Father Racine?
Not at that stage, but much later. I got very close to him. And we used to talk about all sorts of things. He had a very interesting story of Indian scientists, about Indian scientists. And he had a very good sense of humor. And also when I was in France, I learned French. So we used to communicate in French, which I think made him happy and also made me happy. And I must also say his contributions to Indian mathematics was recognized both by India and France. He was made honored by the Légion d'honneur by France, and he was a member of the what is now probably Indian National Science Academy, and so on. So it was not something which was
not recognized.
Not recognized. And I met him, in fact, in Bangalore on his deathbed.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he was there in.
He died in Bangalore?
Yeah. In, I think, I can tell you the name of the hospital, St. John's or something, one of the Catholic hospitals.
You mean he moved to Bangalore for some time, or
no,
he
no,
came
no, no.
just
I think
for
because
treatment?
of his illness,
He
this is
came
supposed to be a
for
good place, and he
I
got
see.
treated. So he must have come to India when he was 30s, 40s, and spent the rest of his life in India.
I don't know if you remember, you took me when you went to meet him once at
I
Loyola
don't know,
College,
but
way back.
Tell me. So what happened?
Well, I mean, he gossiped a great deal about mathematicians in Chennai. I realized that there's nothing contradictory about somebody wearing a cassock and being lively. So,
no, he's very lively, very interesting, I mean, very cultured, not only in mathematics, but in other things. And as I said, with a really very nice sense of humor and so on. Of course, when I was a student, I used to just go and meet him once in a way for this. I told you that there was no English translation of Van der Waden.
English translation
of Van der Waden.
Yeah, right.
But it's only that year one translation appeared. Somehow I got to know that. Talking about Racine, one of the things was important thing, I think, for us, for me. He taught these subjects, emphasizing on concepts, then simply on computations. That was the usual thing before, I mean, and we could talk to him. We can freely anytime we can go and talk to him. We used to teach some mathematics, and as I told you, there was no translation in English of the book at that time. But the first year I joined, there was English translation.
Yes.
I somehow found out. I don't know how. I didn't have any contact outside, and I ordered it from Higginbotham's. It cost a bit of money, but still I ordered from Higginbotham's.
Right.
Then when I was discussing one day, I took it to Racine. He said, "Oh, this English translation, how did you get it?" And then that English translation had some mistakes, not in the original. So when I was studying it, I had not convinced. So I used to take this book and talk to him. And he had the German edition. So he used to look at it. Of course, he could read German and said, no, this is not what they should just translate and so on. So that was, so in some sense, if he found somebody was interested in mathematics and good, he mentored them and also advised them about their career.
That's right.
So teaching mathematics, mentoring, and then also not just you are a good guy, okay, go or something, but to see that they go into the right places, right career, and so on.
You were saying something about the applied mathematics subjects. You didn't find them exciting? No. How was your performance at the final exam?
In the
honors course?
It was respectable. So I got a first class, but nothing extraordinary.
Would you remember who came first to the university?
Yes, I know. And everybody knew he will come first. And he had the same name as myself. It was a different one. Because he was so good in his examination. So, I mean, everybody knew you will be the first. And Seshadri and I will be somewhere in between or something like this.
I see.
So that is okay. As I said, it's a honorable performance, first class or something.
You didn't get to know other mathematicians in Madras like Anand Rao or Vaidyanathan Swami?
No. Except there is one mathematician whom I will not name. He used to give, see, there seem to be extracurricular lectures which are outside your syllabus,
Right.
and university professors will give. And we had to go to the university all the way, taking bus or something. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Do you have intercollegiate lectures?
It was, I don't remember now. Yeah, I think some of them might have had, I don't know. But this is not intercollegiate, it's the university you have to go and listen to the lecture.
Yeah. The university had a different sort of significance, or they were considered,
much above
that
your
was
things,
always
and
considered.
the professors there gave a lecture
Right.
to these young guys and so on.
Right, right. So then you sort of came to TIFR Bangalore, I guess.
Not Bangalore, sorry.
Sorry, TIFR Bombay.
Mumbai, yeah.
And then what you sort of remember of sort of arriving at TIFR?
Yeah, before arriving, I think you have one question which you will answer.
Right.
So how was my interview in TIFR?
Well, that's what I mean.
Question.
Yeah, that of course is.
I remember, not completely everything.
Yeah.
And K Chandrasekharan and G Ramanathan, they were the interviewing committee.
Right.
Only two?
Yeah, only two. And I still remember one of the questions. See, they asked about usual Cauchy's theorem. In Gursa's book, it's stated in such a generality, it's very hard to prove, which you never use in practice.
Right.
So I started Jordan curve or something, and then luckily for me, they asked what's Jordan curve. I mean, what's a function of bounded variation? So that was analysis.
Right.
So I could answer them, I mean, quite well. So luckily, if he had asked me exactly the proof as in Gursa, I mean, that's supposed to be one of Gursa's best contributions. So I would have been lost. So analysis was quite okay. And there's one more thing I want to say, it's more amusing. They asked me what is the Fourier series of e power I theta.
All right.
So I said cos theta plus I sin theta. And then I was very proud. Because, in school, in universities, we learn only with real coefficients.
Right,
You never talk of Fourier.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a smile in their face.
Right.
The reason I understood was, nowadays Fourier series is written in terms of e power I theta.
Right.
They wanted me to say e power I
it is,
theta, but they could object to my answer. So.
Right, of course.
And algebra, I don't think I did too well.
Right.
But the other things, I don't remember the other questions, but it was quite okay.
But
But it was not a very brilliant interview or something like this. It's quite.
That year, there were other people taking the interview with
There
the
are
same committee?
Two more.
Yeah.
One was Seshadri.
I see. That's what I was going to.
One was Seshadri.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, we went to Chennai, Bombay together from Chennai. Anyway. And there is one more guy, I don't remember his name. And he left afterwards. Left means went to some other place.
I see. Yeah.
So essentially, that year there were 3 students. And earlier there were some 2 or 3 people like Singh Bal, Raman, and others. I mean, I can name some more.
Right.
They were earlier students.
So how was life in Bombay in those days? Once again, did you feel a big difference between Chennai and Mumbai in those days? No. You probably didn't have much contact outside the Tata Institute in those days.
Well, Basani was there, he was in the Institute of Science or something called.
I don't mean in terms of mathematics, but general social contact.
I won't call it social contact, but every week or once in 2 weeks, Seshadri, as you know, is very much interested in music. Himself is a first-rate musician.
Right.
So he used to go to concerts, usually Carnatic music, which used to be somewhere in Matunga or something, some 20 kilometers away. We would take a bus and so on. Since I had nothing else to do, I used to go with him and sit in the concerts, which was very good. The only social contact was going in a packed train and sitting.
And how were the living conditions of the hostel?
See, in the old days, it was in the so-called Old York Club. New building was not come. Now there's a New York Club. And there was a servant quarters there. There were all these big shots over there, club, and all the students were lodged. Of course, the I mean, the workers had left. So we were all lodged there. So you can imagine what would have been the conditions. So I don't want to say much more about that.
Right.
But we didn't seem to have minded. I think somehow we are probably, I mean, I'm just thinking aloud. Our interest was focused on mathematics, learning something.
You didn't bother with yeah. But just one little piece of detail there. In those days, did you have to come back to Chennai and then you were told you were selected, you had to go back again, or you just stayed on after arriving?
I think we were told later.
You were told later.
But one thing was done at TIFR those days, even now. Once you're called for interview, your travel and living expenses were paid by the institute.
Right.
When the interview was over, what did you think? Did you think you will make it, or?
I didn't want to think about it. Because as I told you, it was not a brilliant interview. In fact, in one thing I am very disappointed. One of the examiners purposely led me to give you a wrong answer. You can imagine doing that, right? Of course, I realized afterwards what the answer I gave is not right. But then I was also somewhat upset that, sometimes it's something like this. You don't know the answer because sometimes there's no answer also.
Right.
And then the examiner asks, do you think this is the answer? Then in that thing you say, you agree with him.
Yeah, you have only two choices. Either you agree or you disagree. So, yeah.
So that was, interview was okay. And and also I think, I guess Racine must have given a strong recommendation. So I didn't too much bother. And those people knew Racine and he wouldn't give me a recommendation like that.